She said, still perplexed at a strange language. But how can I cease to be troubled? Will it leave off coming because I pretend it wants you? Is it your resemblance that hurries up the street? It is not, he said, and you shall not pretend at all. The thing itself you may one day meet. Never mind that now, but you'll be free from all distress, because that you can pass on to me. Haven't you heard it said that we ought to bear one another's burdens? Hey everybody, welcome back to the library, and welcome back to this month's episode of the Inkling Review. This month we are looking at Descent into Hell, the 6th novel by Charles Williams. Now, Charles Williams is, like Owen Barfield, more obscure of an inkling compared to particularly C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. But Williams, unlike perhaps Barfield, his fiction has a pretty devoted following, even if it is not necessarily mainstream. And Williams is a bit of an outlier. He's an odd person within the group. For one, he, unlike Tolkien and Lewis, was not an Oxford professor. He did work for the University of Oxford, but not for the academia side, but for the press. In fact, their offices weren't even in Oxford. They were in London. And while Williams had a small bit of college education, he actually was a college dropout. His father, going blind, needed him to come home and help run the family business. And eventually, Williams got in on the ground floor, the university press offices, and worked his way up to where he became an editor and higher-up official within the organization. But even though he was working in the literary industry through the university press, Williams also aspired to a literary life himself. But this was all happening separate from Lewis and Tolkien and Barfield. Barfield and Lewis knew each other from undergrad days. Tolkien and Lewis met when they were both young professors. And the rest of the group, of course, through their interactions with Lewis at Oxford, all formed the Inklings. Williams's literary career largely develops outside of the Inklings. It's not till the end of his career does he start to interact with Lewis and start to become a member of the group. And Williams actually doesn't even become a full-fledged member of the Inklings until World War II starts, when, in order to save the university press from the Blitz, the Oxford University Press moved from their London offices out to the university itself. Once there, Williams joined in with the rest of the group, and he said that, in a letter to his, I believe it was his wife, said that these people are good for my mind. Williams got from the Inkling something he never got when he was in London, and that was people of equal imaginative ability, giving him critiques and offering him both encouragement and also advice on how to make his writing better. Now, the funny thing is, though, is that Williams, like everyone else in the Inklings, got there because of Lewis, but it was almost an accident. Williams had the bad habit of, when he was editing books, of actually reading them, and he was reading Lewis's book Allegory of Love. And Williams was, though not actually in academia himself, was a scholar, an independent scholar of Dante and the ideas of courtly love, which he actually really thought should come back in what he called romantic theology. He had his own very unique take on Christianity. He was a mystic Christian. And this influenced a lot of his work, but it was reading the Allegory of Love and him seeing that Lewis had exactly right, or at least in his mind, had exactly right what the importance and impact was of this idea was in medieval literature. And he was writing him a fan letter. And unbeknownst to Williams, at the same time, Williams had been, Williams' fourth novel, The Place of the Lion, had been given to Lewis. And Lewis loved it. and wrote a fan letter himself. And in fact, just as Williams's letter was going out, Lewis's letter was coming in, and Williams added a wonderful phrase to his letter that that this increased his admiration for the staff work of the Omnipotence. And through this serendipitous event, Lewis and Williams became friends, and so Lewis was very anxious that when he found out that Williams was going to be coming to Oxford, that he pulled Williams almost instantly into the group. Once there, Williams's great work, Taliesin through Logos, which was a collection of Arthurian poetry, that was being in the final stages of being refined. But the last bit of his Arthurian work, and these two collections are what his great contribution to 20th century literature are, you can see the effect of actually getting the back and forth with people like Lewis and Tolkien in that final collection, which is called Region of the Summer Stars. But Williams, unlike Barfield and Lewis and Tolkien, whose literary careers developed with each other, Williams was an established literary figure thanks to the fact that he had written 5 novels. And by the time he was coming to Oxford, his 6th one was about to be published. And that 6th book is what we're going to be talking about today, Descent into Hell. So what's the story? Well, if you've ever read a Williams novel, you'll know they are fairly unique. They are filled with complex prose and incredible emotionally charged energy. In that way, like everyone else in the group, we can apply the phrase neo-romanticist to him. However, the style he uses is very modernist. So he's a very interesting combination of these two things. But in his novels, yes, you get the modernism of the complex prose and the emotionally charged imagery. But what you also got in the first 5 novels were these large plots that the fate of the world was hanging in the balance because of the Holy Grail or the original tarot cards or what have you. But in this book, Williams sets it in a small suburban town outside of London, which he calls Battle Hill. And there is no grand plot. This is the lives of these people revolving around a play they are going to be putting on by a poet and playwright who every reader should instantly know that this character is Charles Williams, a guy named Peter Stanhope. And this play that they're putting on brings into interaction and contrast the different people of the town. The 2 main people, though, is one girl who has seen a doppelganger of herself and is terrified by it, and the other is an advisor on the play for the costumes, and that is a military historian. He, however, is not haunted by some exterior force, but by his own desire. He actually is longing after and then lusting after another young girl involved with the play. And something that is interesting about Williams' novels is that everyone ultimately gets what they're after. It's just not always what they think they're getting. And the interesting thing here, the contrast that happens here, is that one character, the girl who is terrified by the doppelganger, starts having everything internalized, but eventually, thanks to the love of the people around her, the selfless love of the people around her, she is able to be embraced by that, and then embrace it herself, and find relief and, in a sense, salvation from this fear. And it's the whole theme of the book, which is called The Doctrine of Substituted Love, which is that, as we read from the passage at the beginning of the episode, is a literal interpretation of bearing each other's burdens. The professor, however, pulls further inward. He is unable to get the girl, and he becomes increasingly possessive and pushes everyone away, and he starts a downward spiral until he figuratively and literally is descending into hell. But unlike the other Williams novels, there is no grand plan, and I think this is a wonderful part of the story structure. It is just the lives of people dealing with, yes, supernatural concerns, just like happened in all the other Williams novels, but ultimately it is just life. So in that sense, it's kind of hard to pull out just one thread. It's all these lives interconnecting in this one, episode of life. And it makes it unique in Williams' novels, and it also, I think, is somehow how he stumbles into his finest novel. So what are the weaknesses of the book? Well, Williams's prose is either you love it or you hate it. I have recommended the book to people, and they loved it, and I've recommended the book, and they told me that they couldn't get through it, and that Williams didn't know how to write. So that is Williams's own unique style is a weakness in the book. If you can't get over it, you're not going to enjoy the book. I think it's not as bad here as it is in some of his other books, particularly The Greater Trumps. But his style is his style, and so I think a hallmark of the style is the fact that he will talk about an image. Williams really felt creating that image was what fiction should do. And so he'll talk around this image seemingly for pages until you really see every angle of it. And that can make you feel static at times. And so that's a universal weakness of Williams's writing, is if you don't like the style, you're just not going to like the book. So what are the strengths of the book then? Well, the strength of the book is the fact that maybe more than Lewis and Tolkien at even their best, Williams's prose is emotionally driven. And in this book, I said this back when we talked about Barfield's This Ever Diverse Pair, Barfield had complicated ideas in simple prose, particularly in this book, but to some extent in all of Williams's work. His ideas are fairly simple. This entire book revolves around the idea and builds around the idea of substituted love. So it's not a hard concept. It is, again, it's a literal interpretation of the idea of the scripture to bear each other's burdens. And the idea that if I am bearing your burden, it's actually a lighter load for me than you carrying your own burden. And Williams was, I think in this book in particularly, finds a way to communicate that very clearly through the lives of the people in this book. But even though, again, unlike the other books that he wrote, there's nothing in the world happening, you feel the fear, you feel salvation, and you feel damnation because of the power of the imagery that he produces. So that is, I think, in all of Williams's work, his greatest strength. And particularly in this book. Alright, how do I rank this book? Well, if I was a person who didn't like Charles Williams's prose, I could rank it probably... I think with this book, I think you can't get under 3 out of 5 even if you don't like his prose. I think it's just that good of a book. However, I love Charles Williams's writing, even if I'm not wild about every novel he wrote. And this, I think, is beyond a doubt his best novel. Again, because I like Charles Williams' writing, I have to give it a 5 out of 5. If you don't, we'll call it the adjusted scale for not liking Williams's prose is a 3 out of 5. But for me, it's 5 out of 5. I just, this is where he brings all his strengths to bear and really let go of a lot of the weaknesses, I think, that are in his other books. What are we doing next month? Well, first off, just thanks for coming in and talking about Charles Williams with me this month. But next month, we're going back to J.R.R. Tolkien, and we are going to be talking not about Middle-earth, but we're going to be talking about his book Tree and Leaf, particularly the story Leaf by Niggle. So that'll be what we're doing next month as we return to Tolkien for the next time. And so please come back and join us again here in the library. Again, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to join us every Sunday here on the channel because we have new content every Sunday. So please come back and see us next week, and we'll see you next month on the Inkling Review for J.R.R. Tolkien's Leaf by Niggle. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time, and y'all take care.